Are you a deal sponsor burned out from raising 5, 10, 25 million at $200,000 a pop? You're in the right place. Shoot me an email with your deal and my team and I will review it. We make introductions to institutional check writers for deals between 10 and 500 million. One call, one wire, debt, equity, or the whole cap stack. Let me know what you need. Shoot an email over to dailydominance9@gmail.com and we'll take a look. And if you're listening thinking, you know what, I'd rather just keep growing my own retail capital base, I've got something for you too. It's called Goldmine. Goldmine replaces the $200,000 spent on annual hires that most operators and fund managers need for deal analysis, investor outreach, marketing, pipeline management, and strategic research. Sven, who we're with here today, is actually a client of mine. So to check out Goldmine, see the link in the description. And here we go, ladies and gentlemen, Sven Kueenle. We're going straight into it today. Sven, thank you for coming on the show. What comes to mind for you when you hear the word Red Bull?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on the show. I'm definitely excited to be here. What comes to mind when I think of Red Bull? Well, for me personally, I think my past specifically comes to mind because I've been a former professional skier and Red Bull athlete. So, yeah, I was fortunate enough to call them my sponsor for a long time, and that's probably what comes to mind for me.
I know when I think maybe a little to your point there, it's like not only athlete, but someone who's got some skills. Red Bull's not just going out there sponsoring anyone. So, Ben Nelson, good friend of ours who introduced us. He's got a Red Bull background as well. I believe that's how you guys met each other too. Um, tell us just about that story. I know, skiing is obviously a big part of your life, but how did you end up winning that sponsorship? That's huge.
Yeah, okay, so that really takes us back quite a bit. I mean, in my childhood, I really was, I mean, pretty much ever since I was able to walk, I think I was fascinated by skiing. My parents took me, skiing on a little hill behind the house, and ever since then, when I saw another kid ski, I that's what I wanted to do, and that kind of um, that was my pursuit throughout my childhood, where I was literally just being outside whenever there was snow. You could hardly get me into the house, and so I eventually, fast forward, 16 years, I turned that into a professional skiing career by competing and going to events and doing pretty good at the time, and that somehow got uh, attention, and one of the folks that noticed me, I guess, were Red Bull. So I was really yeah, fortunate to get them as a sponsor at the time.
And did you have to, I think just kind of in the work comparatively, I'm thinking, okay, in the world of music, as you know, Sven, I make music, and when you start
Hmm.
off, you hope that like a couple record labels pay attention to you, and then eventually you, if you do your job well, you start getting like these bigger brands that will pay attention to you. So did you just go straight to Red Bull, or what was that uh, process like of having to kind of, I'm assuming earn the right for them to pay attention to you in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good analysis when you talk about music, and I'm sure the reason why you do music is because it's your passion, right? And so that was the same thing for me with skiing, and I mean, for the longest time, I never thought of sponsors or being paid for skiing. I just literally wanted to go out there doing what I love doing most, and it's really that passion that was like the driver of it all, and that essentially is what makes you do it 24/7 if you can, and that I think was the reason why I became good at it, because I loved nothing else as much as skiing, and so I was doing it all the time and practicing a lot, and eventually going to events and competing and doing okay, and then doing better, and then doing really good. That's when I eventually did get, outside attention. But it was never really, that was not the motivating factor. Of course, when you get to that level, then it's like, oh my God, I could actually, get paid for doing what I love doing most. And then, of course, that is also an additional layer of motivation, but it wasn't the driving factor from the beginning.
Yeah, just doing what you love is was the spark. So, yeah, I'm assuming, but I'd love to hear it from you here as well. Like most athletes, you kind of realize that eventually there's a bit of a light, at the end of the tunnel. Is that, which came first, that thought, or did you know someone who was investing in, U.S. commercial real estate? What was the bridge into what you're doing, now full time?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, there is a realization when you're a professional athlete that eventually there is going to be an expiration date to it, unfortunately. So, and I did realize that, fairly early on, or like in the midst of my career, that there is going to be a life after the sports. And so I saw it too in like a lot of athletes that I kind of knew and saw when they came to the end of their career, and some of them just kind of fell into a hole and didn't know what to do with their lives. And it's also tough because being an athlete, you admired for you do, everybody recognizes you for the that cool athlete guy, and you get a lot of recognition for what you do. But then when you stop doing that, that it's kind of like your identity gets taken from you, right? And so for some people and a lot of athletes, I actually, I saw this quite often that it is, tough. And so I never wanted to really get into this situation, and that's why I was thinking like, what is it that I can do? And so while I was still actively skiing, I was just, doing small investments on the side. I mean, obviously, as a free skier, which I was doing, you don't earn that much money, but I had a little bit saved up to invest into small condos that I bought in Germany, and that really triggered that spark again, much like skiing did when I was a child. It now kind of transitioned into the investing into real estate that got me super hooked and really interested, and so I dedicated all my free time that I had, especially in the summer months, to real estate and learning more about the business, reading a ton of books, listening to podcasts, and just then going out and buying stuff, fixing it up, selling it, flipping it, reinvesting the capital, and starting really small and very organically. And that's how I essentially got started in the business.
I love that. And it's cool to hear, I didn't know that specifically about your real estate background, but still how you kind of had the typical, I'd say, humble beginnings, even in real estate. So many people we work with, they bought that first house, the first condo, the first duplex, whatever, and just kind of scaled from there. So you did that in Germany. And so curious to know where that the bridge across the Atlantic came in. I'm sure you probably, said listening to podcasts, maybe you started hearing about some of the numbers and really how much more profitable I'm assuming you can be as an investor in the US than in Germany. Was that the spark? What's the story there?
Yeah, that was part of it. So for one, I was always intrigued by the US real estate market. I've always been following folks in the US who are in the business. And frankly, I mean, the U.S. is the biggest real estate industry in the world, so it's a significant market that has, as you said, the numbers are just more. I mean, there's definitely higher returns that you can achieve there than you can in Europe. On top of that, I mean, so my story or how I got to transition into the U.S. market was because primarily, I mean, so I've done the business or for 10 years here in Europe, right? And we did all kinds of projects, like, as I said early on, small fix and flip projects. Then we bought multifamily. Then we did condo conversions, office conversions, started doing land development and bigger projects, and then eventually sold most of the development projects when the market was getting kind of crazy in 2021 and 2022, when the money was essentially almost free but also the prices were just going through the roof. And so that was our really awesome timing to get to sell some of those projects. And then what happened is shortly thereafter, the war in the Ukraine started. Then with that came the energy crisis, the interest rate hikes, and then frankly, the politics in Germany or in Europe, in most markets anyway, are not exactly landlord friendly. So all these factors to me kind of, you know, or all those factors made me look elsewhere to say the least. And that's when I really decided to go into the US market because I now saw a window in the US market too. Because same thing there. I mean, from pretty much ever since 2009 all the way through 2022, the market has just gone up, and it's a super competitive market. So it was never really a good time to come into the market as a foreigner, right? But that all changed in 2022, 2023. And so I was like, okay, this is now an interesting time to set foot into the US market. And that's exactly what I did in 2023. I basically made the move, went to Texas because I figured, out of all places that I mean, it was a, market strategic decision because I looked at, the US as a whole and which of the states have, more growth and for what reasons. And so looking at the metrics and the data, it was obvious that Texas is one of the states that is interesting. And so that's, why I started there, which is kind of ironic as a former skier to end up in
Right. Yeah.
Texas out of
All
all
those
places,
all
right?
those mountains in Texas.
Exactly. So, yeah, and so that's how I ended up in the U.S. Market, and then I decided to focus on multifamily and larger multifamily properties. That's all we do and focus on. And yeah, started Rockfish Capital, and now we're in the market.
Yeah, yeah, you are, and that's really, especially I have a few friends who timed the market well and sold a lot of their assets in 2021 at a time where, just was talking to you offline, being a part of a mastermind that, we experienced so much growth from 2020 up until about 2023 because it was kind of like, if you snap your fingers, the money would just appear on the retail capital raising side of things. And so in that time frame, a lot of individuals and operators and sponsors have just been like completely wiped out. But I've admired the people like you, or just, been happy to see you got in at a really hard time, but now that you're in at a hard time, it's kind of like the only place you can go from here is up. And I've met your team as well, and just the efficiency in which you guys operate. It's something to be noted. And I would just say already, as we continue hype you up here to our listeners, guys, if you haven't already, rockfish.capital, check it out as you listen along here. So, one thing that was always interesting to me working with a lot of capital raisers is just this allure of like, oh, I want to raise foreign capital, maybe similar to your allure of like, oh, I want to do deals in the US. But I think what a lot of capital raisers found is it sounds a lot easier than it actually is. I'm curious to know for you coming in a different way here, what are some of if someone listening right now is like, I do want to start seeing if I can raise money from Europe, or Germany, or we'll just kind of stick to what for an American. Like what are some pitfalls if they wanted to try and explore that direction that you think they would not be seeing, that maybe you could kind of give them some wisdom before they try and make that jump?
Sure. I mean, for one, as you know, capital raising is about trust. So people generally don't necessarily invest in the deal per se, rather than the people running the deal, right? And so it came natural to me to utilize on my existing relationships that I have from Europe, and me as a person being the bridge to the US assets made it just more natural for me to raise capital in Europe. That being said, I also do understand why a lot of US operators don't necessarily work with foreign capital, because it is, from a compliance standpoint, it also comes with quite some challenges in terms of structuring, regulations, and all this stuff. Also, from a cost standpoint, it's certainly more expensive to raise foreign capital than it is to just raise US capital. So, I mean, that being said, yeah, at the end of the day, it is very interesting for European investors to have access to US assets if there is somebody that they trust. Because again, from what we said earlier, the returns that you can generate in the US are more than what you can generally generate here in Europe. So, yeah, I mean, for other people and U.S. operators who want to, want to raise from European capital, I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's just about the trust that you need to basically get from outside investors, which I would definitely attack as the biggest challenge in that regard. And then on top of that, the compliance issues.
Yeah, yeah. With compliance, I'm curious if there's just like anything real quick to pay attention to or structure wise that you could be like, oh, you know what, definitely make sure you do this when you're set. Well, I don't even know what what type of entity you would need to set up, but so kind of
Yeah.
walk us through that briefly if you could.
Yeah, just like on a kind of overview, what I can say, what my experience is with a lot of foreign investors is that they don't necessarily want to be compliant to anything in the US. So if you have or find a structure that makes it, for example, what we do is we have a blocker entity that we set up in Germany, for example. And that entity then essentially becomes the LP of our project, and all the investors invest into this entity here. So the investors themselves have no US exposure as like individuals or with their entities, right? So that's something that I just noticed that most investors just prefer that route. So that's one way to do it. Of course, you can also set it up that people come directly into your US entity. That just also means that you now have, those individuals or companies that they have to, do their K1s in the US and essentially become compliant to the US rules and regulations.
Yeah, yeah, and you're right. I mean, most Europeans that I know, especially if they're living in Europe, they want nothing to do with with the U.S.
Exactly.
compliance. So
Yes.
that's really interesting, and I feel like kind of like an obvious answer, but it's good to hear that that's how you do it because I'm sure it'll inspire some listeners. Now, for you, and now I know you kind of have these two investor pools that you can raise capital from. What's been, from your perspective, aside from having these two different resources you can go to, some of the benefits of having these two different investor bases?
I mean, the benefits of course, that you have a bigger variety of or more sources that you can tap into in terms of raising capital. So that's the obvious benefit, I would say. It's just more options, and more options is certainly good when it comes to capital raising, as you very well know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, cool. I know you've got a deal you're working on right now. You've been working really hard on it. Sure, you guys got. I know you guys got more in the pipeline for this year too, which has been cool to kind of talk about briefly offline. But yeah, for those tuned in right now, let us know what's Sven working on right now.
Right now, we're just a few weeks away from closing a 404 unit multifamily apartment complex in Houston that we're really excited about. It's got some good value add to it, and just the basis excites us. So, yeah, a good deal that we've been tracking for a long time, over a year actually. It took about 8 months until we got it awarded, and yeah, so that one we were excited about for sure.
Cool. And then you're doing. I mean, you guys. That's normally your sweet spot, right? Is deals of that size? Is that what you're looking at for the rest of the year?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the average or deal that we're looking at is somewhere in the 200 to 300 unit range, and yeah, we plan on closing like 2 to 3 more deals this year.
Cool. And we said Capital earlier. You guys can check out Sven's website. What is in your in your from your perspective, Sven, the best way for anyone tuned in right now to get in touch directly with you?
I'd say LinkedIn. Yeah, Sven Kueenle at LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way to connect with me.
There you go. And that's SvenKueenle. I'm
Yes.
not looking at my notes right now. Did I get it right?
Dude, you killed it. I can't believe you got that right. Yeah, so Kueenle. That's how you spell my last name.
Just type in Red Bull skier capital razor. You'll find it. Um, cool. And then it's been Sven, it's really been a blast getting to know you just over the last few months and working with you on the gold mine side of things too. For those tuned in, curious what the heck gold mine is, first of all, you can check out, like I said, the link in the description. But for you, what's a pain point that you feel like you didn't realize you had until we began working together?
Yeah, I mean, Goldmine really has been an amazing journey. It's been relatively short for me, but it's already opened up so many doors in terms of what's possible in working with AI. And just, I think at the end of the day, the time savings is probably the response you get the most, I would assume. But it truly is that. And obviously, we all know that time is valuable, and so. That's been huge for me, and just seeing how you can utilize AI to become a true assistant with like basic admin stuff and things like that has been a true pleasure to experience.
And you can even customize the avatar of your assistant. And Sven now has a blonde assistant,
Of
right?
course.
His wife loves that one. Um,
Yep.
so, anyways, yeah, like I said, guys, check out all the notes in the description today on Sven, everything we got going on over here at Daily Dominance as well. Sven, one more time, best way to for listeners to get in touch with you.
That would be LinkedIn, Sven, Kueenle.
There you go, guys. Go connect with him right now. This has been another episode of Daily Dominance. Make the decisions, execute on them, dominate your market. We'll catch you in the next episode. Remember, in all you think, say, and do, take it to the next level.